Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So welcome to Startup Grind Winston-Salem. My name is Matt Williams. Happy to have all of you here. Woo, right? This is a good time, all right? So Startup Grind is an event series and website designed to help educate, inspire, and connect local entrepreneurs. It's a resource that's powered by Google for Entrepreneurs. And each month we welcome an amazing speaker who shares what worked, what didn't work, and what they do differently. And it's really a great opportunity to connect with other folks in our local startup community, glean some wisdom and insights from some of the best in the business, and really improve your chances of entrepreneurial success. So that's Startup Grind. And tonight we are actually in for a treat as we welcome Betsy Idilbi, who's the CEO and co-founder of Tech Talent South. This is Female Founders Month, so we're bringing in some dynamic women all across the country to share their story and also offer some insight. This is the second part of a two-part series. The first part was at Startup Grind Davidson. The second part is here locally, and what Betsy will actually be focused on is the business side of Tech Talent South. The first part was really focused on the personal side of being a female founder, the challenges and opportunities that provides. So a little bit about Tech Talent South. It's a leading code camp and immersion program in the Southeast and a feature program for us here at Flywheel. Before starting Tech Talent South, Betsy ran Little Idea, which is a company focused on physical prototyping and product development. And following a successful merger between Little Idea and product development giant Inventus, Betsy jetted off to Chicago to learn code, and it was in Chicago that she met her co-founder, and they agreed to launch a code school, which is now Tech Talent South. So during her time at Tech Talent South, Betsy has been named Emerging Leader by CIO, selected to participate in Leaders Under 40, listed as one of the top 25 people to know in the startup scene in Charlotte, named one of the 7 people to watch in Charlotte in 2016, and has been honored by the Charlotte Business Journal as a 2016 Woman of the Year. And so if you didn't think that she was like superwoman enough, she also is the mother of 2 kids under 4 and is doing some amazing things in her family and in the community. So y'all give a big Winston-Salem welcome to Betsy Idilbi. She also has a smile that lights up a room, if you can't tell.
I like that you call it a smile. My close friends call it chicklet teeth, but I prefer that.
I love it. Well, thank you for joining us, Betsy.
You're welcome. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you here. So we're going to start from the very beginning and talk about some of your formative experiences. Peter and I were chatting a little bit about sort of your parents' path, which was pretty traditional. They were accountants, if I have that right.
My mom was a teacher and a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was an accountant by trade who worked for Duke Energy for 35 years.
Oh, got it, okay. And so you were the wild oat in the family and decided that you wanted to do something completely different. So what led you into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I'm the black sheep for sure. My sister is also an accountant, and my brother is a consultant for a large corporation. But I knew I was interested in product development. After school, I worked as an account executive. I actually majored in advertising at UNC Chapel Hill and worked as an account executive after school, moved to Chicago, worked in PR, had a really great job, but started building my own products on the side. And I was an early adopter to Etsy. I don't know how many of you know Etsy now. None of you would have known it back then. So I was sort of spearheading that world, and I was developing products and hawking them on Etsy, for lack of a better word. And I thought, man, this is cool. I started building out my own e-commerce sites and going to trade shows and selling my products. And I ended up running my first business that way, and turned that into I merged that company, and then I had an opportunity to move back to Charlotte, where I'm from, and run a small product development company called Little Idea.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that experience and running that company and the eventual sale to Aventus. What did you learn through that process?
So the funny part about that is I actually reached out to two people. I knew I wanted to be in product development, and there were two places to go in Charlotte. There was Little Idea, which was a team of like 5 people, and then there was this big product development giant, Inventus. And I emailed Lewis, the CEO of Inventus, and I was like, hey, I want to be on your team. And I don't think he ever responded. And now he's a friend, and I don't hold that against him. But what it caused me to do is email the other company, and the timing was right. And they said, hey, we're a group of engineers. We're really great at prototyping, sourcing manufacturers. Man, we suck at the business part. Can you come in and help us with that? And so I came in, and we were lucky enough to be on Nat and Lewis's side for the next year. Everywhere they popped up their banner bugs, so did we. And we were like, hey, we're cheaper. We're cheaper. Come here. So we ended up merging with them, and they are an incredible company based very close to here. They own Inventor's Digest. The TV show Everyday Edison was filmed in North Carolina, which very few people know.
Okay.
And
What is Everyday Edison for folks who, because I'm not familiar with it, I don't know
yeah,
anyone else.
so it's like the PBS version of Shark Tank.
Okay.
And it was filmed right here in North Carolina.
Nice.
I would guess that about half the as seen on TV products that you see are prototyped in Charlotte right now.
Who knew?
I know, it's a little known secret.
Cool. So you left product development, and then that took you into the world of software.
Yeah.
And what sort of prompted this move to go and learn code? And I think you were one of the only women in the actual code training program that you participated in?
I was the only woman that traveled for the code program that I
okay.
participated in.
Yeah.
So I was at Little Idea, and we were in service-based industry, so you come through our doors and we prototype whatever idea it is that you have. We weren't in the business of judging those ideas, we were in the business of executing them, which are very different things. So we saw some weird stuff, and some people pour a lot of savings into their $1 million idea. And I sort of had this conflict where I was like, okay, I'm not in the business of saying, eek, but I was thinking that. And I thought, you know what? So simultaneously, a lot of people were coming and they had a mobile app idea. And I thought, well, if I can empower all these folks to code, man, they can build out ideas for the cost of next to nothing, right? Host and domain, and that's it. You just have to have the skill set. So you can build all the wacky ideas you have, and then that one that really is the $1 million idea, great. So when we merged, I thought, okay, I can either onboard, jump on business development for Lewis right now, or I can go and own something of my own. So a little unknown part of that story is I ran Little Idea, I did not own it. So I took off to Chicago. I said, I'm gonna learn to code. I abandoned my husband, and in true startup style, in my 30s, slept on my buddy's couch for 3 months and learned to code.
Cool. And so now you learn to code and you've started Tech Talent South. For folks who just aren't familiar with the actual code camp, could you tell us a little bit about what that is and what the process looks like for those who are participating and the instructors and whatnot?
Yeah, so our bread and butter program is Code Immersion. It's an 8-week immersive program where we teach full stack web development. So you come in with little to no technical skills, and you come out being able to build a dynamic database-backed application. So you think of something like Twitter versus something like your favorite restaurant's website, which is static and nothing changes on the back end no matter how much a user interacts with it. So that is what we started teaching. We've since evolved, and we now teach a whole host of things, everything from machine learning to Swift to big data, and of course software development. And we now do it in 11 locations across 6 states and have a presence in Spain.
In Spain?
In Spain.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Where are you located in the States?
So we are, oh my gosh, this is such a great challenge for me, Matt. I can't believe you put me on the spot. I like to try to do it in chronological order, but sometimes I fail. So someone has to count that isn't me. Okay, so Atlanta, Asheville, Raleigh, Charlotte, New Orleans, Dallas, Columbus, Phoenix, Winston-Salem, Wilmington. Oh gosh. No. No.
Google it.
Who am I forgetting? I'll
It's
come
all
up with it in a
good.
second.
It's all good, though.
I'll know who I forgot. One of my community organizers is so peeved at me right now.
It's all right, but I mean, that's pretty impressive, though, in terms of rapidly building this distributed business. You know, how has...
San Antonio.
San Antonio, okay, there you go. I knew it would come to you. How has the business model changed from the original concept?
Yeah, so it has certainly evolved. So we are still doing our traditional B2C, students come in, pay tuition, learn to code, go out, that model. But throughout time, it's evolved in that one corporation started to reach out to us. Career Builder was the first one, and Career Builder was pivoting and they were moving to Rails. And they called us, and they have a big presence outside of Atlanta, and they were like, hey, we need to train a lot of people really quickly on these skills. Could you come run an internal code school for us? And we're a startup. So we said, hell yeah, we can.
That's pretty awesome.
And so after a few years, we started really going after that business. That's even shifted a little bit, and now we're really concentrated on, we have access to so much talent. We run free meetups in every market. We do guest lectures and company tours for our students. We touch so many people that we have this database of people. So we recruit and do train to hire programs for a lot of organizations.
Wow. So are people actively coming to you for talent?
Yes.
Okay.
And the need, of course, is only growing, which is exciting for our business.
Yeah. For folks who aren't familiar with Ruby and Rails and some of the language of code and sort of software development, could you talk a little bit about what demands are you meeting for the startup and corporate community in teaching people these new languages?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of times people ask, like, why Ruby? And I always say, you teach what you know. That's what I learned, so that's how we started Ruby. But the reality is, we teach in our public-facing courses, we teach the foundations of code, right? So we teach you enough to be dangerous. The odds that you're gonna go be a Ruby developer after our class, probably less than 50%, right? But you're gonna understand all the different aspects of a web application. And if you go and you work for, a company that's based in PHP, you're gonna be able to read that code and recognize it's a matter of syntax at that point, and you understand the way it's laid out, and you can really scale up. You can learn other languages rather quickly. And candidly, Ruby is a really easy language to pick up, which is one of the reasons we teach it, because we only have 8 weeks.
Where do we see these languages in use? So are there products, software that we are exposed to just sort of as the average Jane and Joe?
Ever heard of Hulu, or Twitter started on Rails, or Yellow Pages, which I like to use as an example, but I don't know why. Because I don't know much longer they'll be in existence. But so Hulu, Shopify.
Okay.
So if you've used an e-commerce site that's based in Shopify, that's all Ruby on Rails. Lots of other companies as well. And the reality is, I want to nail down the point of, we teach Ruby on Rails. That doesn't mean that the only thing you can go look for after is a Ruby on Rails developer position, right? You understand the foundations of code. You can really go anywhere in software development from that point.
Where are some of the people landing that finish the program?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's been a really exciting few years for me to see the folks that, the original folks that agreed to go to a code school in a kitchen of a co-working space, and where they are now. We have folks that are at McKinsey, we have folks that are at Centra, we have VPs at Bank of America, and then we have a big contingent of folks that have built out their own products, right? They had an idea, they wanted to build it out, and now they have. So they're kind of everywhere.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
In terms of the trends that you're seeing in the tech industry, what are some of them that excite you? What are some tech stacks that are emerging? And for me, stack was a new word for me. So if you could define it for some folks who may not be familiar with the terminology, that could be helpful too.
So every company uses a different group of languages to build their different products, right? And as you would expect, none of them are the same, which just makes my job all the more challenging. So a tech stack is all the different languages you're using to build your products and operate your business. So we're seeing a big shift. One of the things we just piloted is a DevOps course, which is pretty exciting. We're seeing
What's the course?
DevOps.
Okay.
We're seeing a lot of interest in machine learning and IoT. So we're actually going to partner with Inventus, so it kind of brings it full circle, and teach an IoT class within their walls.
Are people familiar with some of the terms that she's using? So IoT, if you want to define that for us.
Internet of Things. So as your Alexa and your Fitbit are learning everything you're doing, we're going to teach a class about that, so I'm pretty excited.
And DevOps is?
DevOps is kind of how server side talks to development side. I like to think of them as sort of translators between the two groups.
So I will say this about Tech Talent South. It sounds like it's a great space to get like a one-on-one on everything tech that's happening right now. So in terms of sort of computer science programs and things that we see in higher education and also in community colleges, why is there such a demand for what Tech Talent South does right now, and what is the unique value that you're offering to participants?
Yeah, so, well, one, even with every computer science grad that's graduating, we still can't fill the need that we have. So we nicely come in and plug that gap. But we really service a different group of folks. So our average grad, one has a bachelor's, and they have been out in the workforce for a number of years, and they may be majored in dance and theater at a Chapel Hill, and then they said, I don't want to work as a barista for the rest of my life. I need some technical chops. So that we come in and we give them those technical skills. They already have the soft skills for days, and then we send them on their way.
What are, in terms of once they have the skills, what's the average compensation that people are saying once they go out into the field? Is that information that you know?
Yeah, and it certainly depends on the person, and I am a big fan of managing expectations. I mean, the courses we run are 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So you learn the foundations of code, and it's not beyond that, right? So you have to be willing to kick down doors. There are certainly people that come out of a TTS and really grasp everything, and they go on and they're a junior developer. But there are those that take a lot longer to get to that place.
Yeah.
But average junior developer salaries in this area, and I would say the Charlotte area, really like 55 and higher. So it's a good place to start.
Totally.
And what is really crazy is if I look at some of our grads that have been out 3 or 4 years, they're making upwards of 80s, sometimes over 6 figures, and some of those folks don't even have a bachelor's degree, which is really exciting.
That is exciting. So it's just a great skill to have today. Now you've mentioned this a little bit, but you've built out a lot of locations. What was your strategy, and what were some of the challenges that you faced as you went into different markets?
So I would like to pretend we had like a real strategic plan at the beginning for our cities, but that would be totally BS. It was sort of like, hey, I like New Orleans, and man, I have family in Dallas. We should do that.
Nothing wrong with it.
As we've evolved, it's changed quite a bit, and now we have models looking at demographics of people and, hey, what co-working spaces can we partner with, and are they excited to have us there? We're also moving a little bit more towards a hub and spoke. So if we have a campus in one area, we're more likely to expand in that same area, so we can share resources, et cetera. I love our Phoenix campus, but I did not properly anticipate, man, it's really difficult to manage a group that is multiple time zones away. So that was a lesson for TTS. So we're trying to stay a little closer to some of our other campuses.
Where are your campuses located? Are they in co-working
You're
spaces?
going to give me the same challenge again? Okay, not cities. Just
in terms of facilities, rather.
Yeah, so places like Flywheel are a perfect example of where we want to be, right? Like when we get to step into a Flywheel, we get the luxury of access to this community that, Peter and Andrea have already built, right? So they already have these corporate connections, they have these startups in their network already, all these folks that play into the TTS narrative. So we, in every market, operate in conjunction with a co-working space.
That's wonderful. Now, Tech Talent South has also been recognized for, as a program great for female coders. Tell us a little bit about how you promoted gender diversity as a result of this program.
Yeah, I don't think it was intentional early on. It has been since then. But I certainly, we have offered scholarships for women from day one, and it was important to me to see other people that looked like me in the program, and I do think I subconsciously recognized how desperately I wanted to see that happen, and I really made a push for it. But one of the other things we do is we work a lot with schools, and we do free kids code, so I feel like we're putting those seeds out early, and we do things like JewelBot, which you may or may not know.
I don't know JewelBot. What
so
is
you
JewelBot?
can program your own bracelet, Matt, to blink together.
Okay. Very cool.
I'll hook you up.
Please. I need these skills, apparently.
Right?
So this is Female Founders Month, and we do want to talk a little bit about your experience as a female founder, some of the societal bias that you've encountered, and how you've overcome those things, particularly in the tech space that's pretty male-dominated.
Yeah, it's definitely, I like to think most of the time it's actually an advantage. One of the things I tell people is you always want to be memorable, right? And if you're always in a sea of men and you're the only female, well, guess what? You're more memorable. So that's a positive. But there have been times where it has been hard. I remember one time when we first started the business, and I had RSVP'd to a meetup. This was in Atlanta, and it was for developers only. And my co-founder RSVP'd as well. And he was like, I'm gonna go, it's great. And I was like, well, they just emailed me and they said, hey, Betsy, this is for developers only. I'm like, what led you to believe that I am not a developer outside of the very obvious thing that I am a female with, blonde hair? And what was shocking to me and very hurtful was actually a woman. But one of my biggest regrets is I didn't go. I let her say no, and I let that be a deterrent, and that should have been the biggest motivator to show up to that event, and I didn't do it. So after that point, I got far more confident, and I recognized, hey, I built this thing, I'm doing this thing. It doesn't matter if I'm male or female. And I talked a little bit last week, but when I was thinking, I was approached about acquisition, I've entertained a few offers, and then when I was raising capital, done a lot of management meetings, never once with another female, which now I think is pretty mind-blowing in itself. But I was pregnant, which was a very different experience. And I got a lot of questions. One particular meeting where they kept asking, so what are your plans? If this goes through, what are your plans? And I really thought we were talking about okay, so if you bought TTS, what happens? No, I recognized, and my co-founder recognized quicker than I did, they were asking, hey, if you have a baby, are you just gonna stay home? Because that's our assumption, and that makes us nervous. But that, to me, is only more motivating, right? So I've definitely noticed it, but I actually believe that it's sort of a motivating factor and makes me want to be more ambitious in our growth and what TTS can do.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think the important lesson is really checking our assumptions and not evaluating people based off of a knee-jerk or stereotypes, that there is space and room for everyone in this field, and I think you're evidence of it, so thank you. Tell us a little bit about company culture and what type of culture that you've built for Tech Talent South, and how do you use that as a management tool?
Yeah, so we're still small. We definitely still think of ourselves as a startup.
Yeah.
So I like to probably overly empower people and give them a lot of anxiety, but I really would rather them beg for forgiveness than ask for permission because I don't have time for that. So we really have embodied a culture of everyone is a manager at TTS. I mean, you have to own your products. You have to be held accountable. We're going to believe you can get that done. And then as far as like the culture outside of that, the one thing that's hard at TTS, so our culture in our HQ, you know, we're all very close. We work quite literally, 6 of us work in 100 square feet, and we have 2 of those pods. So you can imagine how close we are. But we have all these multi-locations, right? So we have a very concerted effort to be on video chats, et cetera, to visit our campuses on a regular basis, and to get in front of those folks that are running the San Antonio campus and others.
Cool. So, in your experience launching Tech Talent South, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, in some ways, I feel like I was naive to so much, and that ended up being one of my greatest advantages. So a lot of my competitors raised capital really early on, and I didn't, and it actually allowed me to stay profitable for a much longer period, and some of them went under, and I was still clicking along. So my naivety was, it truly was an advantage. But were there things I would have done differently? Like, yes, hell yes. I probably would have looked for help earlier on, and I would have gone to I think when I started TTS, I value mentorship. I used mentors, but not in the right way. Like, I went to them and I talked about how great TTS was, but I didn't go to my mentors and say, holy hell, I have an employee that's giving me such a hard time, or hey, I have this AR issue. Or I didn't air my dirty laundry. And as I've matured, I've recognized that's what they're really for. They've seen this shit before, and they can tell you how to fix it. And that's the stuff that you have to share.
Wow. The power of vulnerability. What do you think are the 3 most important things for founders to know about or focus on?
This is super stressful, Matt, because I maybe was asked this last week, and I don't know what my answer was, and I feel like I need to be consistent.
Hey. The more insights, the better.
So I think it's really important, and I probably did say this because this is super important to me. When you say, hey, I want to build something, just go and build it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something, right? Just get something out into the world. I've seen this both at TTS with the students, and of course at Little Idea, all these people that have these ideas, and they just let them live forever, and they're like, well, I'll let it release to the world when it's this. And I'm like, it's never gonna be that. Like, TTS still isn't this, and I'm 5 years down the road. So you just have to get something out there. That would be one. If you say you're gonna do something, just go do it. It doesn't need to be perfect. Perfectionism is way overrated. What else? Surround yourself with folks that are really smarter than you in areas that you know you need help. I hate math, and I run a company, so that's kind of scary. So I immediately looked for a COO who was just brilliant beyond belief with numbers. I don't want to deal with that stuff that she does. So look for those people that will complement you. And then to my earlier point, man, find some great mentors, some people that you can really trust and you can tell them everything.
Great. Now we're going to turn it over to questions.
Where do you find your instructors? That's a great question. So we really use the community mostly. So we will reach out to, if we're moving into a new market, the first place we're going to look is like for instance, in this area, it'd be like the Triad Developers Group or whatever. So we look for movers and shakers within that market, and even if they're not interested in teaching, they typically know the people that are. And then some folks we train internally. So we will have some people that will come out with, we have someone right now that was the first tech fellow at Davidson. We brought her through the program, we sent her through, we had her TA, and then we trained her how to be an instructor, and she goes out and teaches.
Can you talk a little bit about when you just come out of school as a pretty junior developer, how do you have the idea and confidence and initial traction to start a school, to start teaching other people?
It's so funny because so many people think I taught the first program. Like, no. That would have been a colossal mistake and we would not still be in business. So I think it's fair to recognize, like, I didn't invent a code school, right? I went to Starter League and Neil did an amazing job up there, and I thought, well, this is incredible. I wish this could happen down south and have a bit of more of a community focus around it. So I didn't come up with the idea of teaching this immersive skill in a short amount of time. So when we went to Atlanta, we looked for a killer instructor to write our curriculum and launch. And I knew what I was doing because I had been in Chicago. What was a little nerve-wracking is making sure that our instructor came through with the curriculum, and in fact he did. But that first class, the whole 8 weeks, I mean, we were just on pins and needles. Like, is this working? Are these people learning to code? I think they look like they are. They seem happy. And it wasn't until the end of that we knew, okay, we're on to something.
Great. Thanks, Marcia.
I actually have two questions. The first one is around collaboration with other female founders. How do you support that? What do you engage in? What do you do?
You know what's funny? I didn't look for a female mentor for a really long time. I mean, I organically got one at my COO. So my COO is female, and she was a general manager of diapers.com when they sold to Amazon. And she's just brilliant. So in my mind, she is my COO, but also a mentor. So I think I didn't actively seek female mentors, and that was a mistake on my part. I since have, and I now find myself in this world of female founders in Charlotte, and it's been unbelievable. I mean, for a variety of reasons. We collaborate, we share resources, but we can also talk about the stuff that you can't talk about necessarily with your male colleagues, which is, man, how am I going to breastfeed my child in a co-working space, in the bathroom, in my car, like the stuff that just doesn't come up and that they won't think about. I mean, I quite literally had a cooler in my car for a solid 6 months. So I now seek that out, and I look for folks that are maybe 3 to 4 years ahead of me, so they can anticipate the stuff that I'm gonna have. So my core mentor is a lady named Tana Green, and she's in Davidson. She runs Blue Bloodhound. If you guys don't know, she's building Uber for truck drivers, and she's amazing. But it is very intentional for me now. I have this network of females in Charlotte and beyond, but mostly in Charlotte.
Okay, sorry, my question was actually about founders, other female founders. How do you collaborate with them and how to support them, create the community? How do you support that specifically?
So new female founders, not existing.
Or in general, yeah.
So we have basically a group of women that hang out in my general area. So for instance, there are 3 women that just went to Techstars Austin from Charlotte who are my dear friends. And we Skype together on a regular basis. Outside of that, if a female founder approaches me and wants to create a relationship, I will absolutely do that. I don't think I'm necessarily putting up a banner saying, hey, I'm a female founder, come find me, but I am there. There's not a lot of time for me to actively pursue to mentor others. So I would say if folks are looking for that, they have to be aggressive on that front the same way that, my circle has been. Does that make sense?
My second question was actually around, you said you were a little later in the game seeking funding and capital.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more about, how that came about, what was the decision-making process and the growth phase to decide to do that, et cetera. And I'll let go of the mic.
It's okay.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I went 4.5 years and I bootstrapped the company. I didn't even take a line of credit at the bank. So that's really crazy, but it didn't seem crazy to me. I thought, well, we can't run a company if we're not making money. So when I actually was entertaining an acquisition offer, and I sent it to a mentor, and I was like, hey, I want to talk to you about this potential offer that I have and, my options, and I want to know what your thoughts are. And he's like, you need to talk to this other guy. He really knows the corporate space. He's going to know your potential over there. And so I, end up emailing this other guy, Don, who's now one of my investors. And he's sitting down with me, and he's CEO of CompuCom at the time. And we're just chatting about the business, and he was like, before you go and like do this, and I gotta tell you, he's like, I am leaving CompuCom, and I'm starting a growth fund, and we're gonna need some companies to pitch us. Would you be interested? And I was, and I thought, well, the idea that I can take these folks that already have all these connections, they have this vision, they can see, the future on the corporate side for TTS and leverage that along with access to capital was pretty ideal. So I wasn't necessarily looking for it, which I think is the best place to be. We were already making money, which makes people far more interested in giving you more money. And I used my network to find the people rather than just pounding on doors saying, hey, we need cash. So it was pretty easy for me, if I'm honest. But easy after the 4.5 years that preceded it.
There are other coding schools out there. For example, Iron Yard closed down their doors within the last year. So how do you contrast between what you're doing and what maybe you thought their missteps are and that why they closed and you're still going along?
The best part of that is, so Dev Bootcamp and Iron Yard decided to close within 10 days of my deal closing. So I was like, hey guys, heads up, I promise this isn't us, but I think I should share this news with you to my investors. So it was not ideal timing for me either. And I will say, it's a small world, so I know the guys at Iron Yard really well. I went and met with them before I ever went to Chicago. I was almost in their first class. And they did an amazing thing, right? Of Iron Yard. When I started TTS, people didn't know what a boot camp was. And they helped educate the public on what a boot camp could do. They were both different than TTS, so both Dev Bootcamp and Iron Yard sold the majority of the company to a big for-profit institution early on. So Kaplan Online owned Dev Bootcamp. Apollo Education was an owner of Iron Yard, and they own University of Phoenix. I think that probably was a big impact for them. And I think they went at growth extremely aggressively. When they were launching in Charlotte, it was a bit emotional for me to watch our freaking buses, our links, our, the billboards all over the city. Every time I was on NPR one day on Charlotte Talks, and I was could not be more excited to be featured. And then I'm on my way listening to it, and I'm listening to the Iron Yard ads on the way to be featured on Charlotte Talks. So there was a big spend, I think, and we didn't have that. For me, I leveraged folks I leveraged co-working spaces. I didn't take on the overhead of, the things that Flywheel and Peter are so great at, right? They know these spaces, we don't. That's not our expertise. So they spent a lot of money on overhauling spaces and advertising, and we just didn't. That wasn't our focus.
So I was interested to read the profile of you this evening before I came, and you were talking about Reshma Shaljani's book, Women Who Code, and the opportunities and the confidence that women, boys and girls, have and don't have early on. But my real interest is that in certain communities that I've been in, a lot of people are talking about the fact that coding needs to become a second language in elementary school.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to hear your opinion on that. And then I also wondered if you could give us one or two reflections of why Women Who Code was an important book for you.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So I actually got to meet her 2 weeks ago, so that was amazing. So we actually bootstrapped the company. Richard and I toured around and taught kids how to code, and we charged. So we charged $500 a head for a week-long camp. That's how we saved the money to run our adult program. And it was kind of hard. So we had some kids email in, and they were like, hey, I really want to come, and my parents can't afford this tuition. And I remember just looking at Richard. I'm like, dude, you can take this bad karma, I can't. And I'm like, we're giving a full scholarship. So anyone that said anything, we were like, yay, full scholarship for you. And forevermore, Kids Code has been altruistic. So we actually teach free Kids Code in every market we're in. And that is something that many people have questioned me on. In every potential investor acquisition, they're like, this is a lot of work. like, this is a lot of work, but it's good and it's something we have to do. So I believe every kid should learn to code. They should at least. You know, when your world is, I mean, everything we touch is technology in some capacity, right? If you're going to live on your phone, you should understand what's happening on the backside of all those applications, and you need to know enough to be dangerous. So we totally believe that every kid should learn to code. Our greatest pain point with that is, you know, we don't charge for kids code at all. So we can't necessarily like advertise it the way I would. And so I tell people, I walk into a class, you know, if I go to Kids Code in Charlotte, I'm always like, ugh, I can tell that half of you are developers' kids. You're not the folks that we need to touch. So we've been working with various libraries and school systems to try to train the trainer more and help and have a greater impact. And then I forget the other part of your question.
Any comment or two on why that book was so important?
Oh my gosh, so I talked about this last week too, and I'll say it again. So she's amazing. But what I think was most amazing about Reshma is, so for those of you that don't know, one, she doesn't know how to code. So that's kind of interesting. No. But she is a story of resilience, and I am such a big believer in being resilient, and that's how you like claw your way to the top at some point. It's very hard. So she ran for office in New York and got totally annihilated. She was an attorney by trade. She's like, man, I really want to get more education. I need to fix the education system. I'm going to run for public office. And so she did, and she got trampled. And she thought, well, screw all you people. I'm going to touch more kids than I even would have been able to in this office. I'm going to go put STEM in all these schools. And boy, you know what? She just went out and did it. And it's incredible. I mean, it's unbelievable what she's built and the amount of folks she touches every year. And you know, I think she does it because she just has a genuine interest in making sure folks have all the opportunities that they possibly can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more question.
So what are your thoughts on the competition online now with such as Udemy and a lot of freelancing teachers out there? What's your future look like with all this uprising education online?
That's a great question, and your skirt is awesome. I noticed it earlier. So when we first started TTS, I feel like I got that question all the time. Hey, what about Team Treehouse? Why would I come to TTS when I can learn at Code Academy, whatever? And I would say, if you can do that, you absolutely should, right? So before I left for Chicago, I also tried to teach myself online, and I got frustrated really quickly, which is the narrative of most folks that come to TTS, right? They just don't decide to sign up to learn to code and come learn to code. Most of them have tinkered in it in some capacity. So those programs end up being, one, a feeder for TTS. So, you know, you get a little bit of interest, you want to learn quicker, you want to be around peers. We are really focused on getting you involved in the community, which of course is a shortcoming of learning online. You don't get to go tour all the local startups and meet the developers in the community. So we have that edge. And then what's so cool is after a program, once you have the foundations, that's when a Team Treehouse or a Code Academy is so tremendous, right? Because now you know Ruby on Rails and you recognize I need to learn PHP. And you can log on, you already understand the syntax, you know what's going on, you really can sit through a couple of video tutorials and you can pick it up. So we believe they're more feeder programs than anything else, and we're participating in that with some partners. TTS is never going to, we don't have any plans to build out a big library by ourselves, but we are partnered with some other people to take our stuff online as well. But more alliances than anything else, I would say.
Well, thank you very much, Betsy. Let's give her another round of applause. All of the insights, the wisdom, the advice, I know for me personally, have been incredibly helpful, and I'm sure for everyone in the room, they appreciate all that you've shared. So thank you for spending some time with us.
This was awesome. Thank you, guys.